Yo guys, what's going on? Lucky Cheese 7 is here today to give you guys a rather super late Eden Zero chapter 205 live stream discussion slash review. Now, the thing about this particular chapter is that I was meant to do this early on in the week when the chapter first came out. But, when you're dealing with work, when you're dealing with, just stuff behind the scenes. That's a lot to handle. And plus, this weekend I just needed to just cool down from all the stuff I was going through with work, and my headphones for whatever reason didn't want to cooperate with me. And I was trying to figure out what the problem was last night. So I decided to do a little test run to see if it was working. Still didn't work out. So I was like, you know what? I'll just go with what my laptop has. So if you hear anything in the background, like the air vents or whatnot, just know it's coming from that. It's something else. But after today's live stream discussion, particularly with this chapter, it should be back to normal when it comes to the audio. If it doesn't sound like as top tier as it's usually been, that's because of that. But with that said, let's go ahead and dive right into chapter 205 with this nice, beautiful cover page of Rebecca, and it's titled 3173. And I remember reading the chapter, getting that page, seeing that title. I was like, Ethereon, Ellie, Rebecca. Like the fact that he threw in Rebecca as the cover page, and you had that as a chapter title. Like you can, there's no way you couldn't put two and two together. Not especially not after the last chapter. Like last chapter was a huge, and I mean a huge, huge giveaway that yeah, Rebecca is Ethereon. I think that's the conclusion a lot of people could draw to with Eden Zero. And it shows. It's not a bad thing. It just shows that yeah, it's heavily hinted that look behind the door, it is Rebecca. What's interesting though is how the events are actually unfolding in this because we don't actually get to see anything on the past chapter. Like we got a little bit of it in the last two chapters, but this chapter entirely, we didn't get anything on what happened before. Like the last thing we got in the previous chapter was the Eden Zero ship, and then starting off with this, you know, we just immediately just cut back to Ziggy and Shiki, which is fine. I have no issues with us getting more stuff between. What's it called? Sorry about that. I just gotta realize there's one more spot I needed to post stream, but that's besides the point. But you know what I mean. So that's like I said, the last thing we got in the previous chapter was the simple fact that they had the thing called the Eden Zero, and building that ship will allow Ziggy to go back in time and save humanity. Now, immediately, like I said, we cut back to the fight between Ziggy and Shiki, or at least we're at a standstill right now. Because you have Shiki going like, the Eden Zero can travel through time, and Ziggy says, indeed it can. The extracted ether from Rebecca, or the ether from Rebecca. Okay, no, I'm blanking that. We extracted the ether from Rebecca and amplified it, then loaded it onto the ship as code 3173 Ethereum. So given that connection, yeah, it's like we get the answer that okay, yeah, it's now flat out confirmed that Rebecca is Ethereum. That is 100% thing. Which is an interesting way of putting it because, it's like I said, go back to the last chapter, it's heavily implied that yeah, Rebecca is Ethereum. Now we get the full on confirmation here that behind those doors, it is Rebecca of sorts. Or at the very least, it's the ether from Rebecca. So it's not the fact that it is Rebecca per se, but it's her ether that is amplifying the ship, which is interesting. And that completely shocked Shiki. And you can see like the level of detail the hero put into the panel with Shiki just sweating. And on Ziggy. The Shining Stars thought it was a weapon. Of course they did. That was the information I gave them. And then Shiki's like, then the Eden Zero you brought here from 20,000 years in the future. And things get a little bit more confusing here, and it's something a lot of people were talking about for a while. Like reading this chapter and getting this, it's like, wait, what? Because Ziggy says, to be more specific, I came from 20,000 years in the future of universe 3173, and it was like, I mean, it's a nice correlation when you think about like, okay, so room 3173, getting that little time, it's nice, but then you kind of question yourself a few things. Because Ziggy goes into this explanation. In Universe 3173, I don't exist. But Shiki sets out into space and takes part in the Alloy War. Then he's flung 20,000 years into the future by the antimatter bombs on Nero 66. That is a fixed point in time in almost every universe. After that, I am born. And that affects the course of events in all universes. And one of the things I actually really think here did a brilliant job at is kind of implementing how we as the readers feel about this because Shiki's like, I don't understand a word of what you said. And it's true because like you understood where things were in the past couple of chapters, and then when you bring in the whole concept of okay, this is from Universe 3173, it's like, hey, wait, hold on, back up real quick. So I like that correlation that hero threw in there from a real world schematics. It's that he's having Shiki kind of represent us as the readers. Did I ever say you needed to? This is Universe 3, a world that exists outside the Wheel of Time. And then Shiki says something once more, kind of correlating back to the last chapter. He says, if you're some hero from the future to save the human race, why are you trying to wipe them all out? And then this is where things get even. I can't say exactly it gets more confusing, but it's something Ziggy just brushes off. He's like, again, do you need to understand? No. And once again, I love how Hero is kind of implementing the reader with Shiki because he's so you refuse to answer the most important questions. Again, that's like a it's like us. It's like, what do you mean no? Like, oh, well, we have all these questions, and Shiki is doing a great job at lampshading that. The idea that this is what I turn into in the future makes me really sad. It really makes me sad. And then he says, "I'll never be you." Like it goes back to what I said in the last couple chapters. Like think of Danny Phantom. It's very similar to that almost. Where he tells his future self, like, I'll never turn into you, never. But Shiki says, actually, you're just not me. And then Ziggy says, of course not. I was Ziggy. I was Shiki. That is all. And, then, he puts his hand on his face and he says, now I am Ziggy, the mechanical king. And it's about time I showed you what a real king can do. And we see his overdrive design, which I think looks pretty badass. I'm not gonna lie. His overdrive design looks really, and I mean really, really badass. And I know some people have kind of commented on the ears, and yeah, okay, the ears, they're not bad. Like if you adjust the ears a certain way, then I think there's a couple ways you can work around it. But the rest of his design, like outside of the ears, I think looks amazing for Ziggy. But I would say adjust the ears a little bit, and then you have a pretty badass design. But again, the ears is just nitpicking, in my personal opinion. And then Ziggy says this: "Ghost of my past, I will wipe out every last trace of you. Then Ethereon will be mine." And then, as soon as he says that, then we cut back over to Dead End Crow. Like we see the Eden Zero ship flying off, and then Dead End Crow is like chasing after them, like it's Gozaboro Kaiba going after the. It's actually funny. I didn't mean to make that as a reference, but the first thing that popped into my mind was like that scene after the virtual arc ends, and Yugi and the crew are like trying to get back to the ship and just try to escape. And then Gozaboro was like, "Oh hell no, you ain't doing this." It's similar to that almost. And as they're flying off, you see Overdrive, Dad, and Crow, and then Connor's like, "No, we be only on defense. Fire a barrage." And then you see Hermit sweating, and Hermit's kind of spaced out because then you hear the call like, "Hermit, huh? Sorry, firing rear missiles." So she was kind of spaced out for a second, and you kind of had this telepathic communication that was going on between her and sister. Sister, did you hear Shiki and Ziggy's conversation? Not because I wanted to, but now I can't unhear it. What do you think? Think nothing. It's freaking bizarre. I can't make heads or tails of it. Yeah, I agree. Even if what Ziggy says is true, there are so many contradictions. And again, I think that's a brilliant way of addressing things. Because again, we had it from Shiki's perspective of taking in all that information. And now Hero's doing the same thing with Hermit. Because I think that's something we need to all take into account here. That is that it is a contradiction of sorts from Ziggy. Like he's saying all these things, and it's like, wait, but juxtapositioning juxtapositioning this event to this event, and it leading to this, something just doesn't add up. And she points that out too. She says, for example, if Ziggy didn't exist in Universe 3173, the Eden Zero shouldn't have existed there either. But Rebecca's B cube had the words Eden Zero carved into it. Why would it have those specific words? And this is where we had Sister interrupt. Ugh, give it a rest. It's not worth the effort. I'll leave the thing into you. I can't just ask him directly. As she's, putting her foot on Clown, does Ziggy want to wipe out the human race, destroy Mother and Ethereon? What is he really after? And as that's happening, you just see Clown going like, like not even responding. And again, going back to Hermit, if Ziggy and the Eden Zero don't exist in Universe 3173, that means we Shining Stars don't exist either. What were we created for? It's a fair question, honestly. It's a really fascinating question, and it does kind of get you thinking and get your gears turning. Like, I wonder. And again, we know that Chapter 206 like gonna be dropping soon, but now it is something we need to think about here. But getting that we see Dead and Crow, and we're going back to the inner core of Dead and Crow with Jin, Laguna, and Holy. This is pretty inorganic for being inside a guy. And Holy's like, does he even really have a power source? Ow, your arm. That looks like it hurts. Could you cry for a second? Huh? What? And My thing is, where does Laguna have time for things like this? Because out of nowhere, Laguna's just like, here's an uh, Oito onion. And she's like, wait, what? And you know what onions do? Anytime you open up an onion, you kind of get that feeling and like your eyes just are watering for whatever reason. Just what are you? I mean, it was a pretty cute exchange. I'm not gonna lie. It was a pretty cute exchange. And again, something I want to address here that I haven't actually said for a while now is that I've been really warming up to Holy as a character. I really have because if you go back to how I viewed Holy initially, there are things about Holy I'm like, I don't know, something just seems off. And now, as we're kind of slowly uncovering more about her character and who she is, we're kind of starting to see a little bit more of her character. And I'm not gonna sit here and say, "Oh yeah, like now everything's all fine and dandy," because there are still some of those early portions of the chapter where she was going like, "Yeah, I won't betray Shiki, not just yet." So that has to come back into play in some point. We don't know in what shape or form, but it is an interesting point of discussion, to say the least. But she does that. See a little bit tears come out, and then you get Laguna and just healing her hand with the water. Huh. Wow, it still hurts, but it's all healed. That's an impressive ether gear. Thanks. And Laguna's like, not compared to yours. Your melting power doesn't have any preconditions. Likewise, as we're seeing something coming out from the vents, it catches Jin's attention, it catches Laguna's attention, same thing with Holy. And you kind of get like these little minions. Let's say they're like antibodies. Like think of like when you have like a virus in the system, and antibodies are like just trying to like clean it out. That's kind of how I view them in this case. Because you see them, they're all coming after. What's the deal with these guys? That's what Jin says, and then Holy's like extensions of Crow. Gross. And Laguna's like, but the fact that they're standing in our way means his power source could be nearby, which is a fair point. And we're seeing everyone like just take them out. Laguna, we see Jin. Seeing Holy like melt them away too. I thought that was actually a pretty nice panel shot too. Just her going like, nope, ain't doing this. Jin going in for the tag, same thing with Laguna, and likewise with Holy. But even still, Holy points out that how can there be so many? They never stop coming. And then Laguna's like, oh, but what the? I can't use my ether gear anymore. Clean, what happened? I finally caught you, you little squirt. And these last few pages, I mean, people are still kind of talking about them, but I don't even know what to say because you see what happens over here. You see the ship. Like it's cracking of clean ship. She gets out as Dead End Crow's like, you won't get away from me. Hermit says, clean. Connor says, no. And then clean. Brother, I couldn't. I'm sorry. And Dead End Crow just plummets her to the ground. Now, here's the thing we're left on a cliffhanger. We don't know per se if Clean is confirmed dead or alive. But that's something I think is worth taking into account here is that we don't know the status of Clean yet. Not until we get the next chapter. And I think next chapter is definitely going to make an indication on whether or not she survives or not. Or at least we'll get an idea of what's going on. And I've seen this argument go from both sides that this is Eden Zero, not Fairy Tale. Some people are like, oh, it's Zero Mashima, there's nobody's going to kill off Clean. That's not true. Because here's the thing. We go all the way back. Belial Goer, not even Belial Goer, Sunjul with Valkyrie, you know, and then again, people want to say, "Oh, Shiki didn't die." Shiki did die in Belial Goer. That was Universe One. There's that, and then the last war arc. Okay, we had some casualties there. We had Creed. We had Ijuna. Okay, nobody really cares. It's more so with Laguna's case, with where Ijuna kind of is. You know, the sad portions, if you will. I mean, Shura kind of kicked the bucket too. So it's a really really interesting case here. And then of course you can't forget about Witch. Like Witch was another big casualty that occurred from the last war. So it's not to say people can't die in Eden Zero because we've seen it. The possibility, I would say, of Clean being dead here, I'll say it's like 55-45. I want to say there's a 55% chance she's alive and a 45% chance that she's dead. That's what I'm going to estimate here, is that it could go either way. I'm just going to put a small percentage. Maybe it's me cleaning. Maybe you could call it coping, but I think there's a small chance that we'll get a little bit more um, of clean survival. Now, if she's dead, again, this is a war arc, and you gotta elevate the tension, if you will. Not to mention, we haven't seen Justice and Elsie for a while now, I'd say. So, even though we're in like the final portions of the arc, if you will, this big revelation with Ziggy and Shiki, learning more stuff about the past, and again, the fourth wall breaking of like, man, this just feels kind of weird, and there's so many contradictions behind it. Again, something we all need to keep in mind here is Hero himself did state he had Ziggy's origin story mapped there from the beginning, and we're not done with it. I've often said that we're not done with it. We're only just getting things started. And when we do get the revelation, like the full revelation, the full backstory on everything, it's gonna be pretty massive. And I do believe that what we get is gonna set up like the final portions of the story. I definitely do feel like that's what's gonna happen here. But overall, when it comes to this chapter of Eden Zero, I'm not necessarily gonna say it's a pure perfection chapter. Not like the last chapter. And did I give chapter 2 or 3 a pure perfection? No, it wasn't pure perfection, but it was definitely amazing plus. This chapter by itself, I'll go ahead and give it amazing. It was still an amazing chapter of Eden Zero, and it does kind of leave you wondering as to what we're gonna get next. I do still think we're gonna get more on Shiki and Ziggy. Do I think we'll get more on the flashback? I hope so. I definitely hope we'll get more on the flashback. But something to keep in mind too is, from a volume standpoint, this is only chapter 2. So we still got like 8 more chapters up before the volume ends. And I do believe, just based on that, we'll get more stuff on the flashback. It's just going to take a bit of time before we get there. But overall, you guys, if I had to give my highlight reel for the chapter as to what I think was the best part, I do definitely think, the stuff with Ziggy was obviously a big deal. And then, of course, you know, just the responses people were giving to it. That to me was like a really, really big highlight for the chapter. Getting it from Shiki, getting it from Hermit. And again, it's nice seeing with what's going down with Den and Crow, with Holy Laguna, and with Chin. I know it's something a lot of people would say is like a super big vocal point at this point in time, especially since Ziggy's there. But if you know Hero's writing style, this shouldn't be anything. And it does kind of leave you wondering and guessing as to what we're going to be looking at here. So, with that said, you guys, that's pretty much all I got to say when it comes to Eden Zero Chapter 205. And I will catch you guys when we get Chapter 206, which is going to be really, really fascinating. Honestly, cannot wait. I cannot wait to see what we get with Chapter 206 because that's just around the corner. And with that being said, you guys, that's pretty much all I got to say on Eden Zero Chapter 205. How did you guys feel about the chapter? What was your favorite part about it? Did you guys have any gripes with the chapter? And what else do you guys think is in store for us with Ziggy's origin? And that's it, you guys. That's pretty much it. I'm Lucky7. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more Eden Zero, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.